Hello, everyone, and welcome to another elite episode of the Get Authentic with Marques show. I'm your host, Marques Ogden. On today's episode, we are joined by Mr. John Wood, the CEO of US Wellness Meats, one of our amazing sponsors and partners. And you know what? Let's bring him on down. How you doing today, John?
Very good, Marques. Thank you for having me on your podcast today. It's quite an honor to be part of your program.
I appreciate it, my friend. John, first question. What does the word authentic/authenticity mean to you?
It means trust in a very simple 5-letter answer. We worked hard at this thing for 25 years. We've been doing this right for a long time. We were doing grass-fed, grass-finished before it was cool, so to speak. Everyone laughed at me when I started this thing back in 2000. My wife laughed at me, my family laughed at me. But I came out of a farming background, and from 1975 to 2000, I was a cattle feeder using grain, and what drove me to make this decision, 1975, we had 5 packer buyers, and it was 4 and 3 and 2. By 1990, we were down to 1, and so you didn't have any marketing leverage. And then I read a book by Alan Savory, who's got a fantastic TED Talk. He's my mentor. He's 90 years of age now. And I read that kind of accidentally in 1993. And it was about managing your land resource. If believe it or not, you go back to northern Africa a million years ago before man, there were no deserts in Egypt and Iraq and Jordan and Syria and Iran. There was all grasslands, believe it or not, and it was managed. It was managed by large herds of herbivores. You had zebras and gazelles, and you had camels and all these animals that ate plants. They were managed by the predators. The predators were lions, tigers, cheetahs, and so these animals had to live in a group, and they grazed in a group, and they continually moved, and they were doing managed grazing across this large swath of Africa. And what happened? Man came along, and man had the same problem. He was being hunted by these same predators, and then man eventually was able to curtail the predator population to the point the animals lost their fear. Then you had overgrazing and overrest. And I observed this in Missouri. Back in the 1970s, you had a pasture, you have an area that was beaten down just like to the carpet, and then you had an area 15 feet away that was a foot tall. And finally, after I read Savory, I figured out what was going on. And I met him. He gave a speech in Missouri in sometime in '93, and then I created a class exercise here in northern Missouri and got about 20 farmers to show up for 3 days. This made you think completely differently, completely out of the box. In 1997, we harvested the first animal, and that animal, actually, I took it to a country locker, and we had it on grass. It looked really nice. I couldn't believe how fat it looked, just off of it. Contrary to what I've been told to do. And we went to the country locker, and a guy said, "It'll grade low choice." I said, "No, I can't grade low choice. You just can't do that on grass." But when I found out that you can do that on grass, there's a lot less fat on the back. And so we sat around a barbecue grill one night, and we compared grass-fed, this very first animal, to a piece of prime grain-fed beef. And it had a big fat rind on it. And 3 of us sat around a barbecue grill, and we all 3 said the grass-fed had a better flavor, sharper, crisper flavor. And you've eaten some of this. You've witnessed this. And we cut it with a plastic knife and a fork, and I just didn't believe it. I'm from the Show Me State of Missouri. You're going to show me this again. And so we did. We did it again in '98 and couldn't believe it. In '99, we did about 6 animals. There was about 6 families were starting to show some interest in what we were doing. And so I got a little smarter, and November of '99, I sent we sent some meat samples off to Iowa State, where I went to college. They had a biochem professor there that took an interest in what I was doing, and another one of the members was from Illinois, and he took it to the University of Illinois. University of Missouri couldn't even test for it in my own home state. And what we found out was this grazing animal has got an omega-6 3 ratio of about 2 to 1. Well, chicken is about 3 to 1. Salmon is like 40 or 50 to 1. Salmon is sky high in omega-3s. I think you should eat a little salmon every week, and we do sell salmon. And so then so grain-fed beef is about 18 to 20 to 1. You get way too many omega-6s. That's due to the diet. When they eat grass all day, which is God put them on the planet to eat grass, been going on for millions of years, the pH in the first stomach, which is a rumen or fermentation vat, is pH 7. And pH 7 creates this beautiful suite of fatty acids, iron branched chain amino acids. You get vitamin A coming out of there. You get this beautiful ratio of omega-6 to 3 or 2 to 1. And you get another compound called CLA, conjugated linoleic acid. And that's an interesting compound from an athletic standpoint. There was a researcher at the University of Wisconsin about 1985. His name is Dr. Mike Pariza, and he discovered what they were testing for those of us that grew up in the 60s and 70s. There was some concern that charcoal grilling over a charcoal grill was going to give you cancer. There was concern that something in the charcoal was going to cause cancer. Well, what they found out with red meat, there was something in red meat that was slowing down tumor growth. That was completely the opposite thing that they discovered. And then they discovered in grass-fed beef, you have a lot of CLA. CLA is a concentration level is dramatically higher in grass-fed. If you feed it grain for 30 days, you pretty much wipe out those levels. So you can't feed any grain to these animals at all or you screw it up. The French did a breast cancer trial back in the year 2000. And they canceled it after about a year because they felt sorry for the controls. They were seeing this difference. And if you go back to 1900 in the United States, we didn't have cancer. We didn't have heart disease. 2% of us were diabetic. And the turn of the century, 1900, we pretty much all ate grass-fed beef. A little bit of grain that was produced went to chickens and went to pigs. So there was hardly any grain fed to cattle. And so we didn't even talk about heart disease and cancer and diabetes in the 1900s. There's a book called The 100-Year Lie written by John Fitzgerald, which is a really interesting book. I read that thing 25 years ago. And he was a writer and journalist, and he lost his parents and aunts and uncles and siblings were all died from cancer. Lived in California, and then he studied what could cause this. Well, we changed our diets dramatically, in the early 1900s. And so MSG developed by a Japanese chemist in 1908. That was a long time ago. And then the DuPont family came into Maryland and started making gunpowder, and the byproduct is fluoride. Yeah, they somehow tricked the government into putting a little bit of fluoride in the drinking water. It's just crazy stuff. And if you drop a drum of fluoride out on the highway, it's a hazardous waste cleanup. And so he went into great detail over all these things that we've done to ourselves in the last 100 years. But the 100-Year Lie by John Fitzgerald is a good read. So what happened after World War II, we had this huge pile of ammonium nitrate left over from making bombs, and the War Department goes to the ag department. We got to get rid of all this stuff. We don't see another war. And so they said, well, it'll make great fertilizer for corn. So they put it out in the Midwest, and lo and behold, from 1945 to 1950, we doubled the corn yield from 30 to 60, and then we had this huge massive pile of corn sitting around. The prices are bad, farmers are mad, and so then they said, well, we got to get rid of all this corn. And then they decided a big old 1,000-pound steer can eat 20 to 25 pounds a day, and that's what they decided to do because pigs and chickens eat so little. So anyway, there's a paradigm shift from 1950 to 1970. By 1970, almost all the beef sold in the United States was grain-fed beef. These animals fatten up a lot quicker, they marble easily, and it was touted as a great thing. And then 1980, I think 1982 was the first E. coli 157 problem, and that was Jack in the Box in Seattle. We actually killed a consumer that ate an undercooked hamburger. And guess what? The pH 7 is this grazing animal. The grain-fed animal's pH 4.5 to 5. And that's where that acid environment is where the E. coli likes to live, and so it's another unfair advantage with grass-fed beef. But the CLA, that's the compound we just touched on. It fights cancer, fights diabetes, polyunsaturated, and puts on lean muscle and takes off fat. We actually have fitness models that'll eat 75% ground beef for breakfast, or 55% ground beef for breakfast, and then they'll train all day and have a flank steak for supper or after protein at the end of the training day. So there's a lot of neat stuff here, and then I'll let you ask a few more questions. I kind of got on
Yeah,
roll.
John, I love this, John, because you have some great information on the history of it, how you got involved, why you got involved. I love how you said people laughed at you when you started. That did not sway you. You kept after it, and now you have a brand over 25 years in the business, and you are very well respected. Your meats are amazing. Again, ladies and gentlemen, U.S. Wellness Meats is a sponsor of our podcast. I use and eat their product. I have had their grass-fed lamb chops. I've had the Denver lamb ribs. I've had the sirloin steak. I've had the strip steak. I've had the chicken wings. I've had the chicken breast. I've had all these things. And what I love, and this is what John said, he's so right. The texture is so much better flavor. It's so much better tasting. And it really is just a lot more. I enjoy it so much more now because of the flavor, the tasting, all these things. And what you're doing, right, John? You're bringing this to life, and it's better for people's health, right? So, John, here's my question. When it comes to you and U.S. Wellness Meats, what is that why factor? What is that it factor? I love you all because not only is your meat amazing, but everything about you, from your website to your socials to your Instagram, because you all follow me now, I follow you. From you're very proactive, but also everything about you all fires to rather, John, your packaging and your promotions and your videos and everything is so high quality to match the high quality of your meats that you have at U.S. Wellness Meats. So my question is, John, what about U.S. Wellness Meats? What is that why factor? People that are listening say, yeah, man, this sounds great, but to help me to kind of become like, what's that why factor?
Well, the why is, the key word is passion. We have a passion for what we do. I get out of bed every morning and I'm doing good things for the land. I'm doing good things for the livestock. I'm doing good things for the rural community, and I'm doing good things for consumers around the country. We've taken a lot of pride in what we do. Everything that we sell has got a story behind it. Those chickens that you commented about, they're raised in north central Arkansas, out on pasture and moved every day on pasture. There's a farmer in northwest Missouri doing the same thing, helping us out. Those lambs are 100% grass-fed lambs. They're raised in Missouri or the Willamette Valley of Oregon. Those are the two sources for the lamb. And I've met all these producers that do the work. I'm very, very careful who we admit into our protein file, so to speak. Like the seafood, I met Randy Hardnell 25 years ago. He was a offshore fisherman that got run by the farm salmon, and he sold his boat and took what money he had left and started a website. He sold out here right after COVID. But I mean, we all these people that we've dealt with, we are all like-minded people. We're trying to do good things for consumers and trying to improve health. And from a health standpoint, I'm 73 years of age, and I still work about 90 to 100 hours a week. I have more energy than I have sense. And I think it's just because I'm fueled with some really, really high quality groceries. And, I've taken sugar out of my diet and taken carbs out. And I'm kind of like the pioneers, eat a lot of fat and eat a lot of protein. So, you are what you eat. I mean, you got to make intelligent decisions. And if you look at the youth in this country today, 75% of them are technically obese. I think if that number's close, it just, you go to a school function and you see too many of our youth, that are not in good shape. When I was young, you're out here, and I always said farm kids in the Midwest were we've all been humble. We all were forced to work at an early age. My mother used to get on my dad. I was trying to carry a 5-gallon bucket and it was just barely clearing the ground. When I was tall enough that I could carry buckets, I was doing chores every day. So we were raised differently in that era in the 1950s and 60s. But it's but we have a lot of passion in what we do, and we have a great workforce. We have very little turnover here, and we've been blessed to hire some really good people that work in the U.S. wellness business. And you touched on some of these things you're looking at, and my social media gal, her father owns a farm on the Gulf Coast where we actually have livestock. That's how I met her, and she graduated from Alabama with a degree in social media and PR. I mean, and then one of the first graduates in the United States with a social media degree, and so we've just been blessed to hire some really, really good people, and we're just having a lot of fun doing it.
John, I really love how you said. Let me ask you a question, John. How many people are on the U.S. Wellness Meats team right now?
49 right now. We're right at 49.
Love that. So, you know what? Here's my question, John. You talk about trust. You talk about your partners, the farmers, the team. You're almost 50 people at your amazing organization. Can you please tell our global audience, John, how it's so important that your team, your preferred partners, your farmers are all aligned around a unified vision, really focusing on, John, I want you to really make this very clear, the health perspective, because that's what's really drawn me in to U.S. Wellness Meats. I'm eating more meat, better quality, and you're right, John. And you know what's interesting too, John? Your food is much more filling to me, and that's odd because it's like steak and steak. Like, no, like if it's something that's more high quality and better tasting, it's more filling. And so I don't eat a lot of carbs anymore. Like I cut my sugar way down. I mean, it's everything, John, is just around choices and help. But talk about how you and your team and your farmers that you partner with are all aligned around helping people become the best version of themselves through, like you said, fuel, diet, which you put into your body.
Well, I'm famous for saying culture trumps everything. The culture that we created here, the pride we created here, like the meat cutters take a lot of pride, and they're cranking out 40,000 pounds of portion retail primals fresh cut stuff every week. We actually employ several companies in the Midwest for cooked products, but my whole premise is culture. As long as the culture is a winning culture, it's just like a football team. You got a successful football team. You're all pulling from the same direction, and you've got a coach that's leading you in the correct direction. And I always say very well run businesses are a lot like very well run sports teams. You have winning attitudes, and we've got people that have worked here for a long, long time, and just love this environment. My customer service gals are outstanding. We still answer the phone, with real people. You call in here and got a question, we're gonna get it fixed. So, and we're quick on responses on emails. So, and the farmers, there's an organization called the Grass Fed Exchange. It's still out there. I was kind of a founding member of that. That was back in 2005 or 6, and that's where I met a lot of like-minded farmers on the grass-fed beef side, and like the chicken people, I encourage them to start their own business. I met them, 18 years ago, and they were struggling. They were trying to do a little farmer's market. I said, you've got a great opportunity here. And I tell anybody in the food business, you got to give this thing 5 years to develop trust, to develop sales. And that's kind of the hard part for people to wrap their head around. I mean, we went through the valley of shadow of death for the first 2 or 3 years. We were way ahead of the curve of what we were doing. And social media came along, and I hired a couple of young kids that were really savvy at it. And I said, treat it like it's your own business. And that's one of my other points. I'm not a micromanager. I just want to treat this like this is your own deal, and you're trying to be successful at it. And that's a pretty simple instruction, but people really appreciate that.
John, people love leaders that are not trying to always lead through micromanaging. They love leaders that can be servant leaders that really allow people to do their jobs, and they really allow people to be the best version of themselves. So, John, please talk more about the cuts of your meat, because again, I'm not going to do it justice. And again, I know from chicken, steak, but like talk more about. I know you guys have porterhouses. Like, no, give us more, because again, I feel, especially, right, John, a lot of people that are listening that are trying to get better at their health and trying to be more focused on what they eat. I think they would love to hear some of the different products, the different meats that you all have they can get from your awesome organization.
On the beef side, there's about 60 choices of beef cuts. We have from the roast department, we have a shoulder roast, a chuck roast, outside round roast, and eye of the round roast. Those are great in the winter months. Years ago, we used to have chuck roast mountain back in 2003 or 4. We just couldn't move those chuck roasts. And then we pitched crock pots. And all of a sudden, we're selling these roasts every month out of the year now. People put that crock pot on the kitchen counter. You put a roast in there every morning. You go off to work. You come back 8 hours later. The house just smells of a wonderful aroma of a chuck roast or a center cut shoulder roast in there. Steak wise, we do a whole number of steaks. We have ribeyes, of course, the popper steak. There's an 8 ounce, a 12 ounce, a 15 ounce, and when we have a bone-in ribeye steak, which is 16 to 20 ounces and 20 to 24 ounces for those football linemen that like a really large meal. They'll fill you right up. We do tenderloin, 6 ounce tenderloins, 9 ounce tenderloins. We do a tenderloin primal, tenderloin Wellington. You can buy a 2.75 pound Wellington. If you're trying to save money, you can buy a ribeye roast, which is 6 1/4 pounds, steak ready. We sell those to several restaurants around the country. We can sell the strip loin primal, which is you save yourself some money by cutting your own steaks. That's 7 1/4 pounds. We sell an inside round primal. That thing weighs about 15 pounds. And you can take ground beef out of that. You can cut steaks out of it or cut roast. We've tried to make this affordable. We tried to make it where families can afford to buy the product. I'm guilty of not going after a big margin. I've seen people do that, trying to sell a blaze for $80 a pound, and then they're out of business a year or two, and they can't sell their middle meats. But, you have short ribs. We have boneless short ribs, bone-in short ribs. We actually have a beef bacon, which is a little bit unusual. And it's also sugar-free bacon. The only ingredient on our bacon is sea salt. I think I sent you some pork bacon. And that's a really unique bacon. And that's the number one retail item we sell as far as revenue, because the sugar-free community goes after that. Like all of our pork sausages and beef sausage and lamb sausages are all sugar-free. So you don't have to worry about sugar in those sausages. And we sell Italian beef sausage, Polish beef sausage. We sell a rustic lamb sausage, which is really popular now. And we sell, the typical pork sausages, bratwursts and Italian and Polish sausages, but they're fully cooked. Those are fully cooked. Just warm them up and serve them. And so those are done. And then, from the pork standpoint, you got boneless pork chops and bone-in pork chops. We have what I call the lineman's pork chop, which is a good 1 pound pork chop, which is a monster. And and then on the lamb side, we probably got 30 different lamb choices. Those lamb Denver ribs are just kick-ass good. If you're ever in Pier 4 in Boston, right on the harbor, they serve those one of their favorite dishes in that Pier 4 restaurant. They put a glaze on those bones, and it's just magnificent food. So, but we have unusual things. We do like a ground rabbit for the person that wants a little different twist, and we do ground elk, and we have a bison selection, and those are all grass-fed animals as well. We work with a bison company in northern Wisconsin since about 2003. They're the number one player in the grass-fed bison world, and so bison's extremely lean. I'm kind of a fat junkie, so we actually offer for the hardcore carnivores. We have a 55% ground beef product. We have one of those with heart in it, and you put some beef heart in there, you can make the flavor, or you make the color look better. And of course, as you well know, beef hearts, you get creatine. If you're an athlete, you're after creatine. And then we sell some interesting organ sausages. We sell like this. Back to number 3 or 4 retail seller. It's hard to believe, is beef liverwurst. This recipe was written on a 3x4 card back in the 1800s, late 1800s. It was given to me by one of these meat people I've met along the way, and his great-grandfather created it. But it's a mix of 20% heart, 20% liver, 10% kidney, and 50% lean ground beef. there's a Braunschweiger that's 35% liver, if you're strictly after liver, and we sell a head cheese which has got beef heart and beef tongue in it. You never know there's organs in there, but the organ, and we sell a raw organ blend as well, a mix of beef heart, beef liver, and beef kidney, and so you can make burgers out of that. You can make spaghetti out of it, and that's become a very, very high seller. People are after those organ meats. There's a lot of health and wellness in those organ meats. And if you talk to Native Americans, I've got a couple of good Native American friends, and when they would kill a deer, these men are in their 60s now, was children in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. They would go out and hunt with their fathers and uncles, and they would eat the organs right out of the carcass. The guy that made the fatal shot got the first pick of the thymus gland or the gallbladder, but our Native American friends knew how important that was.
I'm loving it. John, phenomenal interview. What is the website for our global audience? And I think you have a little offer too, like a little promo offer for our audience. Again, how can our audience go and support you and buy U.S. Wellness Meats?
It's really simple. Just go to uswellnessmeats.com. uswellnessmeats.com will take you to the website. And then we have a toll-free number. You can call 877-383-0051, repeating 877-383-0051. And there's a promo code I gave you today, but every other Sunday, starting this Sunday, we have a newsletter. I suggest your readers sign up for the newsletter, and that newsletter comes out every other Sunday. Well, it comes out every Sunday, but every other Sunday we have an article in there by Dr. Al Sears, a pretty famous holistic doctor down in South Florida, and there's a 4 or 5 letter code in his article. It's usually in the subject line. It's pretty simple, and that code is 15% off, and that's good through Sunday through Wednesday night. So a lot of people just mark their calendars every other Sunday and read the newsletter rather carefully, and that's how they pick it up. And there's always a sale list. There's always a sale list in that website. You'll see 6 or 7 sale items that we feature every week, and they're on sale for the week. So those are, and we have a cashback game we play on the first order you make. If you fill out a little form, you can actually get 25% of your money back on the first order. So there's a pretty good incentive to make that first order.
And actually, John, this will be coming out here very shortly. I can't wait. Again, everybody, I personally eat U.S. Wellness Meats. I've had their steaks, their lamb, their chicken wings, breasts. I've had pork chops. I've had their lamb burgers. I've had their patties. I've had it all. Let me tell you something. Everything I've had, their Denver lamb ribs, I have leg of lamb steak. I mean, I've had it. It is fantastic. You will be so glad that you reached out and you got U.S. Wellness Meats and you ordered it and put it into your refrigerator. So again, we want to thank U.S. Wellness Meats and John Wood for sponsoring our show and being a collaborative partner with Get Authentic with Marques Ogden. And the authentic tip of this great interview: in life, in business, work with people you trust. When you trust people, that's when greatness happens. Again, my name is Marques Ogden. I am the host of the Get Authentic with Marques show. Thanks for tuning in. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Marques.
You were
Recording
awesome,
stopped.
Recording has stopped.
John, that was fantastic. I'm having this come out.